It's 12 o'clock, so good afternoon, everyone. I see 7 participants. I'm gonna wait another minute for a few more folks to hop on before I get moving. I'm sure everyone is enjoying this gorgeous day, so I'll give it another minute for a couple more folks to join. We know I had some more registrants, so I want to give people an opportunity to hop on quick, but I know it is beautiful out there today. All right, it is 12:03. I'm going to get started and people will join as they're able. Um, Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Welcome to the Wednesday session of expanding Solarize as part of Philadelphia Energy Authority's Solar Week. We're having a great week thus far. We've had already a handful of amazing events, and we're going to flash the calendar of the rest of the events at the end of our session today. I think there were some folks on yesterday that are joining us again today, so thank you all for making the time and prioritizing Solar Week and joining us for these important discussions. Before I introduce myself and jump in, I just go over a few housekeeping items for our Zoom today. Alon and I are going to go through a presentation, and then we will be taking questions towards the end. So please feel free to drop questions as you think of them into the Q&A box, and we will address them towards the conclusion. And anything that we need to discuss further or look into, our contact information will also be up at the end, and we're happy to schedule additional time as well. So with that and without further ado, my name is Abby Rambo. I am the Solar for All Director with Philadelphia Green Capital Corp, or PGCC. Thank you all for joining us today for Expanding Solarize, a session focused on consumer protections and solar accessibility in the Solarize Philly program and our future work to expand the program to the Philadelphia region. If we want to go to the next slide. Thank you. Quickly before I turn it over to Alon, some background on the Philadelphia Green Capital Corp, or PGCC. We were launched in September of 2021, and PGCC exists to expand equitable access to clean energy, the clean energy economy in the Philadelphia region. And really, how do we do that, and what does that mean? The organization really works to fill gaps in the market and bring different forms of capital to the table to help bring clean energy programs and projects to life. So that means bringing together public, private, philanthropic, grant funding to our Green Bank, which is really a specialty financing organization to help expand programs such as Solarize Philly, support other programs like Built to Last at the Energy Authority, and a whole host of other programs and projects that really support green energy adoption in our region. And with that, I want to turn it over to my co-host today, Alon Abramson. Alon, if you want to introduce yourself.
Great. Sorry, I keep looking over to the side on my other screen. Bad habit. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I know it's a pretty nice size group, which I can see all of you on almost one screen of the attendee list. So just drop it. If you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A. I think we can probably do this kind of in real time if there are questions that pop up. For those of you who don't know me and the Energy Authority, I'll just give a quick background. So I'm Alon Abramson. I'm the Vice President of Residential Programs. So basically all of our consumer-facing program work falls under me. And the Energy Authority, where I work, is a municipal authority based in Philadelphia that's looking at energy as a tool for primarily economic development and job creation. But along the way, we're really thinking about, how do we leverage that fact that energy, inherently is a way to save cost and improve environmental conditions. And how do we kind of leverage that to alleviate poverty and improve public health? So it's kind of the broad way that we're looking at this space as this Energy Authority, kind of thinking about that too on a long-term horizon. So if you want to go to the next slide. Obviously, today we're talking about solar. And so, and as we, talk about consumer protections, I thought probably makes sense to give you a quick overview of Solarize Philly itself. So our program in Philadelphia that launched in 2017, designed to help folks go solar, whether they're homeowners or they're business owners. How do we get solar on their rooftops? It's a big question. And the question comes up of, how do we get solar on rental properties? Bigger conversation that, we probably can't really get into today, but we are in Pennsylvania where community solar is not an option, really, practically speaking. And so, we're really looking at place-based solar on the rooftops of these properties. And that's what Solarize Philly is focused on. So go next, Abby. So what is Solarize? Is it's essentially a way for us to vet installers to operate in this market. When we came onto the scene in 2017, certainly there are a good number of great solar installers in the city. There's even more now, and it's a big question to for folks who are shopping for solar to understand, like, who can they trust, like what. There's so much information out there. How do you select a company to work with? And so what we're doing is basically vetting contractors to certify them as verified installers for our program. We ensure that they're using, really high quality equipment, that their pricing is competitive, and that we're like on top of this list that we're vetting their financials, which is really important for us to make sure that they're going to be, in this market for long term. These are 25-year projects. We want to make sure they're there to honor their warranties and, provide service for their customers. This again is, in service of improving consumer confidence. Again, so people feel like these are big investments, so they feel comfortable making that investment. And also, importantly for us, to make sure that this market is equitable. So while we see like market like higher higher income households able to kind of go out and buy solar systems and make that investment. That's not as accessible oftentimes for lower income households. So finding mechanisms to increase that accessibility, whether that's through a lease or other subsidy, has been a major focus for us, and really always woven into the program design of Solarize Philly. We'll talk a little bit more about leasing and how we've increased accessibility that way. And finally, there's a big job training component to this. We have a kind of complementary sister program called Bright Solar Futures, and that is at various different levels, starting in middle school, high school, and post high school, of training folks to basically be able to enter the solar solar market, solar job force. Obviously not the middle school kids, but at least getting folks up to understand solar even at earlier schooling is important for us. Next slide, Abby. So kind of solarized by the numbers here. As of today, we are at over 3,300 systems that have been contracted, most installed already. And so this is just like the big number slide. I think the biggest thing to see here is the $64 million of investment, and the fact that that has resulted in 400 real solar jobs in this market. And that's, again, this is like the whole principle of the Energy Authority and Solarize, is this increase market demand. So increase market confidence, so you increase demand for clean energy, so that we see that investment actually happening, and that directly translates to job creation. Next slide, please. And I mentioned, the focus for us on improving access. This slide doesn't show kind of market rate or low income, but what we're seeing is a huge increase in a huge growth in the program since we introduced the lease option in 2022. And since then, I guess in 2021, actually, since then, really explosive growth in the uptake of solar. And while that's not shown here, but about 75% now of all of our new solar customers are actual low income households. So by basically making solar accessible with a no upfront cost option through this lease, we're seeing folks who traditionally haven't been able to go solar are able to do so now. Slide. So okay. So that's kind of the primer on Solarize. I'm going to hand it back over to Abby to talk about solar lease pilot that is getting kicked off, and then I'll jump back on in a moment.
Thanks, Alon. Yes, so as Alon said, we've seen such success with the solar lease that has been part of the Solarize Philly program since 2021, offered by one of our partner installers, Posigen. We've seen such success that PGCC is now working to really broaden that work and enable a lease product for more of our partner installers to be able to deepen our work in LMI communities. So we're about to launch a 60-home solar lease pilot to help bring low-cost solar to low-income households, not just in Philly, but in the 5-county region. And to do that, PGCC is partnering with Capital Good Fund, which is a CDFI, a community development finance institution, to bring the Pennsylvania Bright solar lease to our region. And through this program, the average family that participates in the pilot stands to save 20% on their energy costs every month, including their lease payment, which is, can be really impactful for low to moderate income households on a monthly savings basis, and also, of course, expanding our ability to increase our solar installations across the region. And with the strong consumer protections that are built into the Solarize program that Alon talked about, and no upfront payment to be able to go solar and to go into this solar lease, it's been a really it has been, and our continued growth in the solar lease is going to be, you know, a really helpful tool in our toolbox to provide additional access for LMI households and also give another tool to our partner installers to help more residents be able to go green. So this is something we're really excited about. It's launching this month. So stay tuned on more information as we roll out this pilot on the 60 households and what that really means for our work with Solar for All moving forward. So if you want to go to the next slide. So how does Solar for All impact this work? So I want to take a step back and provide a little bit of a backstory on Solar for All for those who are unfamiliar. It's a grant program as part of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And that fund was part of the Bipartisan Inflation Reduction Act, IRA. GGRF in total is a $27 billion investment to, number one, combat the climate crisis. And in that GGRF fund, Solar for All is a $7 billion federal program focused on bringing solar specifically to low and moderate income households. In fall of 2023, PGCC worked with the Pennsylvania Energy Development Authority, PETA, to submit a coalition application to the EPA for Solar for All. And PETA and PGCC were named one of the 60 selected applicants for Solar for All, which is really, really exciting. And PGCC will administer the Solar for All program in the southeastern Pennsylvania region, with PETA really focusing on the rest of the Commonwealth, but we're going to be working very closely together in the rollout of the program and the financial products that will bring solar energy to the low to moderate income households through Solar for All. And if you want to go, actually, can you go back? Sorry. I'll get there. I'll get to service delivery. So I'll talk a little bit more about the program goals before I move on to service delivery. I want to touch on a few things here. Solar for All is really specifically to serve low to moderate income households. And we're going to be doing that through financial assistance specifically for solar storage and enabling upgrades being roof work and electrical work, electrical panel upgrades to allow for system installs on primarily, as we roll out this program, single family homes based on the policy landscape in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's what we're able to do, and that's what we're going to jump right into as we have access to capital and can deploy the funds. Another big piece of Solar for All is to ensure a 20% household savings on a individual household's electricity bill after going solar. So that's another key requirement of the grant funding and what households will, beneficiaries will see as part of being a Solar for All program participant. Other key components are creating a sustainable solar market and investing in our workforce development. Specifically, Alon mentioned some of PEA's workforce development programs, Bright Solar Futures and GRIT. Those are programs that we're going to continue to invest in, as well as PETA, our counterparts at the state level, investing in broader other workforce development training programs and wraparound services to ensure that more folks can get access to training for quality family sustaining jobs. And really, all of this is to ensure a meaningful reduction in CO2 emissions. And to get there, we really want to make sure that as part of this process and kicking things off, we are having sessions like this one where we're talking to consumer protection partners, we're talking to installers, we're talking to local municipalities about removing policy barriers, making sure that we're understanding interconnection and permitting nuances as we scale a Solarize program from Philadelphia to the greater region. And we're able to do that effectively. So we're really making sure that we're reaching the households that we want to reach with this program, and that our partners are able to participate in this process and like streamline the delivery of this as much as possible over the next 5 years. So now we can go to the next slide. So I said next 5 years because the Solar for All grant, it has a 5-year performance period. And part of that over that 5-year performance period, we anticipate over 14,000 homes, individual households in Pennsylvania to go solar. PGCC, because we are a coalition partner really focused on the southeastern Pennsylvania region, we anticipate that we're going to have a hand in over 6,000 households going solar. Additionally, I mentioned the enabling upgrades, which is another piece of about 20% of our financial assistance can be used for the enabling upgrades for a household to be able to take that solar array. Across the state, over 5,000 households receiving those enabling upgrades. Just under 500 across the state benefiting from storage. And we're really targeting workforce development and creating, as I said, quality family sustaining jobs, certainly in our region, and in partnership with PETA across the state, and investing in workforce development programs. Altogether, this is over 70 megawatts of solar installed in the 5-year performance period. And I just want to note that we PGCC are working really closely with our counterparts at PETA and at the state on finalizing our plans and contracts. So all of these numbers and projections are a little subject to change based on, how our budget and everything is approved by the EPA in the coming months. But this is certainly what we're targeting and hoping that we could do as much and as many households as possible. Now we can go to the next slide. So Solar for All, who will it serve? As I said, it's really focused on low to moderate income households. And there are 2 ways that we kind of talk about like the eligible beneficiaries or households for Solar for All. They can be folks who are located in a census tract that is identified as a through the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, which is a CJEST census tract, one of the low income and disadvantaged tracts, which is a term used by the EPA. But really what that means is folks that are in a census tract that is low to moderate income, which is 80% area median income, or a census tract that is also experiencing some kind of environmental or energy burden. Those are the inputs that go into this screening tool. So if we look at this map here, there are some key areas that we really want to focus on as we roll out this program to make sure that folks in parts of Philadelphia, Norristown, Coatesville, Chester, Lower Bucks, Pottstown, know about the Solar for All subsidies that will be available to them through the Greater Solarize Philadelphia program. You don't need to be located in one of these areas specifically. These are target areas determined by the EPA, but also an individual household that is at or below the 80% area median income can also qualify for the program as well. This is just a couple ways that we can like really target and inform where we are doing the most outreach and engagement to make sure that folks know that this is something that they have access to. If you want to go to the next slide. So I kind of mentioned this, how we're going to be doing this work is in partnership with PEA and the Solarize Philly program, and really expanding that program to Solarize Greater Philadelphia. So that really means baking in all of the pieces that currently exist in the Solarize Philly program and broadening that to the entirety of the 5-county region. It will include the same pieces that it already includes. Market rate residential installs. Anybody can express an interest in going solar with Solarize, and it's up to them what kind of how they want to finance their or purchase their system. There's going to be an LMI residential component as well, and that is where we're going to be plugging in the Solar for All subsidies for these LMI households. And of course, there's going to continue to be a commercial component that we also hope that will expand in the near future and over the 5-year performance period as we see hopefully some enabling legislation around community solar that would really make commercial solar adoption like more viable for some commercial partners. If you want to go to the next slide. So again, as I said, because we've seen such strong solar adoption with our current lease offered by one of our partner installers, Posigen Solar Lease, we plan to use a lease model to deploy Solar for All subsidies through our expanded geographic area. And Alon had mentioned this earlier, and I really want to drill down on the number of low to moderate income installs that we've done since 2021 with the Posigen lease. Overall, 51%. So, now definitely the majority, 51% of historic Solarize Philly installs have been on LMI households. And with the majority of solar contracts in 2023 and 24 being our LMI installs, which is, those numbers are really telling and what's enabled folks to be able to go solar. And we've seen such an uptick in the adoption of that solar lease. That's something that we really want to expand. Because there's no upfront payment and we are baking in those consumer protections, it really has been extremely accessible to many, many folks. And now as we're moving into this additional PA Bright solar lease pilot, we hope to have more of our Solarize Philly installers be able to offer this solar lease option as well. So we're focused on consumer protection. So I do want to spend a little more time here talking about like the consumer protections piece that we plan to bake in as we move forward into this expansion and as we roll in Solar for All funding. We'll do a procurement in fall of 2024 for Solarize Greater Philadelphia financial partners and solar installers. So an RFP for our financial partners and an RFQ for solar installers to, again, qualify to be one of our partner and participating certified Solarize Greater Philadelphia installers. Say that 10 times fast. So this will include a process from, PEA's last round of procurement in 2023 and some new things. So for financial partners offering a lease and an RFP, and in that vetting process, we'll go through checking financials, obviously looking through 2 to 3 years of the company's financials and ensuring that they have really a strong path forward for financial viability to be holding these leases long term. We look at things like sufficient cash on hand, working capital ratios, and ensuring that they're not too leveraged to be able to be doing this work, especially as we're expanding with the number of folks that we intend to be serving. We also ensure that partners have a mechanism for operations and maintenance over the course of the lease, and that's something that we're really taking critical thought to as we are going to be subsidizing these leases with Solar for All. We want to make sure that there is like strong O&M coverage and that we have there are sufficient funds and additional support in that case for individual households. And as part of Solar for All, with it being federal funding, there are going to be additional layers to our upcoming procurement and RFP for financial partners to detail how they will meet federal program requirements. And then alternatively, an RFQ this fall for installers, it'll follow a similar format to previous procurements where PEA will conduct customer calls, project inspections, company's financial health review, and interview process. And again, there's going to be additional requirements for consideration for SFA installations based on our federal program requirements when it comes to Davis-Bacon wage rates and complying with those. All of that is all this information is something that we hope to be providing in the next few months and soon. So there is going to be a slide towards the end where you can sign up to be sure to receive more information as we are rolling out this RFP and RFQ. If you want to participate or if you want to get more info, be sure to sign up so you can stay in the know as more comes out.
Back to me, Abby.
Yes.
Fantastic. Great. So we've now kind of talked at you a lot about, what is Solarize Philly and where we're planning to go, both by introducing a new lease that's, more broadly accessible, and then, solar for all, where we'll kind of grow what we've been doing in Philadelphia to the region, and, in the hopes of also growing the local market and kind of pushing for additional low-income adoption of solar. And so again, given that this is a consumer protection webinar, this is a big piece of what we're always thinking about in our program design, and the way we are interacting with consumers. And so I wanted to kind of give an overview of like what we mean when we're talking about consumer protection. So just definition first. So obviously, we're talking about laws and regulations, and honestly, sometimes just best practices that are about the safeguarding our participants, making sure they're not being exposed to deceptive practices, anything, any unfairness or anything that's fraudulent. And at the market level, we want to ensure that there's fair competition as well, and that the folks in our market are getting accurate information, right? So they're not being told about free solar, which is not a thing. They're not being kind of told about the fact that there's a 30% tax credit when they don't have any tax liability, right? So it's something that they can't really take advantage of themselves. So making sure people really understand what is going on with solar, what the real costs are, what the real incentives are, is the critical component here. But we also want to make sure that, after like post-purchase, that they're being covered in case something does go wrong, that there are warranties in place, that there's, the ability to cancel in certain conditions as well. And that's also very important with leasing. So, that's kind of the high level, and then want to talk a little bit about what we're doing specifically with Solarize right now and kind of moving forward. So can you go to the next slide, please? So again, our big focus is removing risk of predatory lending practices, misleading sales tactics, as discussed, and problematic contract terms, right? So as we do our vetting of our contractors, we look at their contracts, right? So that's a part of this entire process, is looking at, it's a standard contract. What does that mean under certain financing situations? We want to see that. We want to make sure that there's no fine print that's going to trip up a customer, or kind of come back to bite somebody. We're always we're constantly advocating for consumer protections, and this applies to the installers, to lenders that we work with, and really anybody that might contract with a consumer. So we run Solarize Philly. We also run Built to Last, and our partnership with American Water Resources. And in every one of those cases, this is kind of the theme, right? What is the customer going to be, the consumer going to be faced with, and like, are we sure that this is going to be beneficial and does not cause harm? So some examples of good consumer protections that we push: clear contract terms. So not only is the contract language not hiding something that's going to be problematic, but that it's also spelled out in plain language somewhere for the customer to kind of be able to interpret And that does include termination options, that there's either fixed payments or at least a very predictable pricing schedule that's going to be offered. So there's, not like a ballooning type of financing. That is something we see a lot. It's kind of, for those who work in the space and know about retail electrics providers, it's kind of a little bit of a tactic there as well, where, you'll sign up for a really good electric rate. And then, once you get to renewal, it might, triple in cost. So we see similar things with financing. If, customers aren't really paying attention, we have kind of unscrupulous lenders that they'll, they might get very like low cost financing for a year, and then that just, accelerates to, for the remainder of the term. So really trying to avoid any of those kinds of surprises, any situation really where a customer can find themselves paying more after doing something that's meant to save them money. So in this next point, we hold a reserve whenever we're doing subsidy for lower income customers. We try to hold a reserve for any loans or leases, so that in case there is a challenge with payment, that at least gives us the opportunity to try to come up with a resolution, so that we can kind of have removal of the system and like a forced termination as a last resort. So it's very important for us. And so PGCC does manage a loan and lease loss reserve to support our customers. And then ensuring kind of long-term operations and maintenance contracts, and reserves, again, for, any issues that might come up with the system, in the longer term. It's also very important for us, again. So we're trying not to have a situation where customers are, left kind of on their own in a situation, again, where it's adding cost that basically undoes any good that we've done with the solar system. In the same vein, workmanship and equipment warranties on the systems. This is very important, and also why ensuring long-term viability of a company that we work with is super important for us, because a workmanship warranty is only good if the workers that did the work are still there to honor it. And then one of the last points here, but we want to make sure that systems are insured. And just to get into the weeds a little bit here, this is actually one of the reasons we like leases, is that the fact is that the customer is not the owner of that system. And so the owner, which is typically the lessor, or kind of a subsidiary of the lessor, they own that system, and they can insure that system in case there is some kind of incident. So just as an example, I'm a low-income customer. I've got a lease for a solar system that, let's say that system costs $15,000. If I purchase that and I own my home and don't really carry homeowners insurance, which is a very common situation, and I had a fire, I now lose the value of that entire solar system, and I'm kind of on the hook, right, for that cost. If in that same situation I was leasing that system, the liability on any disaster situation would be it would be like the concern of the owner, which is the lessor. And so obviously it's a terrible situation and there's this fire, but at least I know that like that particular piece is not going to be my responsibility to to cover the cost of. So we think that it's kind of like an additional benefit. It's similar on like O&M, long-term maintenance of these systems when they're operated and owned by a third party. That kind of takes the onus off of our customers, especially those that might not have the means to do so. So last point, and this is more on the accessibility side. We really want to make sure that we can capture folks that should be eligible for a low income kind of subsidy program of whatever kind. So ideally we're finding eligibility just based on geography. Folks know that unfortunately the poverty in Philly and actually in the entire region tends to be very concentrated, especially if we zoom in on the census tract level. We can generally classify entire census tracts as kind of eligible or not. That really helps, right? So all we need to know is what your address is, and we can say like, okay, you're going to be eligible for subsidized lease or whatever the program might be. And then secondly, given that many folks are already participating in some kind of program, whether it's like SNAP or Medicare or something like that, that's already checking for their income and qualifying them. The ideal for us is always leaning on that, looking at those other eligibilities as kind of a good enough measure of your income versus having, folks basically resubmit the same information over and over every time something comes up. Frankly, you shouldn't have to share your W-2s to go solar, right? So the more we can do to kind of avoid that, the better. So that's how we're approaching this. We obviously always have to work within the confines of whatever the funder requires. So, federal grants are notoriously, documentation heavy, but Solar for All has been designed with a lot of this in mind. And so we're hoping we can really get away with making this as consumer friendly as possible. So with that, I think we can probably jump into some questions. So yeah, we've got our we've got an active interest form for anybody who's out there who's interested in kind of getting on the list once Solar for All and this expanded Solarize Greater Philly program comes online. We'll just put a blast out and make sure the folks know. Yeah, we can also jump into some questions.
Awesome. I do see a question in Q&A from Mitch, and I'll read these back out in case people are like on their phone and can't see. Mitch says, can residents who participate in PECO's CAP program participate in the lease program, and will they still save money by doing so? Yes. They can still participate. They can be in CAP and also participate in the lease program. Alon, do you want to further expand on?
I would love to further expand on that. Mitch, thank you for this question. It's something that has been on our minds a lot as well. For just general information for folks on the call, CAP is PECO's income-based payment program. So for folks at different income levels, they basically have the cost of their electric tied to their actual income, and so they're not paying above typically 10%, but at certain incomes, it's actually capped at 6% of their income is going to be spent on PECO bills. So we really don't want folks to have to lose that, and we also want just in general for folks, even if they are kind of capped at how much they're paying for their electricity, to still be able to benefit from solar. There's this use cases where we can imagine this is beneficial, especially if a family is kind of on the cusp of that cap qualification. We really want them to be able to go solar in case they do increase their income, and now they have this buffer of energy savings, of cost savings with their solar system. But the wrinkle in this is that CAP traditionally doesn't consider the cost of a lease in their calculation. So, as far as like your net energy costs, typically, PECO is just looking at the amount of kilowatt hours you're using, and the kind of rate, and calculating your cap offset based on that. What we would like to see PECO do is actually consider then, if there's a $40 a month lease, include that in the total cost, and then apply cap on top of that. And that's something, that's not finalized, but is, we're in discussion with PECO. And, we'll probably have to go to the Public Utility Commission to basically have like a re-examination of how we're thinking about these public programs.
Great question. I'm jumping into the chat from Julian. What's the plan for outreach to the 251 municipalities in the 5-county region? Great question. Something that is on my mind every day. And I'm trying to think about how to do and be effective at as we scale this program, because Solarize Philly operates currently, as of today, just in Philadelphia County. Philadelphia is a city and a county, so we have it's been helpful, and we have like one licensing and inspections agency to work with when facilitating our install projects, or our installers are facilitating there. projects. So expanding that and reaching these individual municipalities, each that perhaps have their own permitting, their own zoning and permitting requirements is something that I'm really thinking about, and hoping that through these initial conversations and through conversations with folks at the county level who are then introducing me and this program to additional colleagues at the municipal level, we can start to disseminate this information and really have conversations around, especially in our target low to moderate income areas that we're really focusing on as we roll this out. Talk to municipal leaders in those areas about how any kind of intricacies, barriers, nuances exist in their community as far as permitting and licensing that we can work with them to kind of address upfront. So that's something that we're thinking about. I'm thinking about, and I hope that if there are folks that are on this call, or if you have connections to those municipal leaders or community organizations, I'm always happy and willing to have additional conversations to introduce myself and introduce this program and what we're planning. So all of that is to say that engagement is in motion. I'm always looking for additional partners to fold into that work. And please do follow up or reach out to me after this if there are key folks in your specific community that you would like for me or for us to talk to.
Yeah, I want to kind of piggyback on that and also get at Gwenny's um, question in the chat about and hey Gwenny, we met a few weeks back when yeah, the kind of outcomes from your consultant work in Mantua. The question is, how can Mantua Worldwide Community Inc. Participate to provide outreach and education to the community of Mantua specifically? And I think that, this sort of runs into the same points that Abby was making, right? Like we know in Philadelphia, I think we have more experience with this, where we understand some information kind of comes from the top down, from representatives and council members and those kinds of leaders in the community, but really it's like there are other networks of information that folks rely on: block captains, ward leaders, and community groups like Mantua Worldwide. And we find that it's a lot more effective when the information does come from those local community groups. So the answer is, like, if we can get you to like get this information out, then that's the move. And it's a conversation really of like what is helpful for an organization like Mantua Worldwide to be able to do that work, right? Is it just like printed materials? Is it education sessions that our staff comes and attends, that we co-organize? Is it funding directly to be able to do this work? The latter being probably the hardest thing for us to find, because there's one thing I can say for federal grants, it is that they are very skimpy on administration and that kind of outreach piece. There is some money here, and I think we're going to do our best to like get that money to groups like Mantua Worldwide, but it's hard to say what that really looks like in practice. But I think, like, to the extent that we can just work together in channels you already have, and events you already have, that's our preference. That's where we've seen a lot of success as well. So that's my very long-winded answer. Like,
But I
let's work together.
also, thanks, on, yes. And I'll just piggyback on that too, to say, like, I want that door to be open and we can follow up and have Gwenny, we can have a conversation about what that looks like and then possible funding to be able to do that work. So conversation to be continued, but the door is open. So let's talk about it. Um, I am checking out the chat. I am checking out the Q&A. Does anyone have any additional questions? This session is recorded. It will be posted after Solar Week for you to revisit at your leisure. Yes, thanks, Alon. And Gwen, would you mind going back to the sign up slide so folks can either use that QR code or just get my contact information is here. Well, I don't want to keep us on. If there are no more questions right now, you can always follow up with me via email. I do want to put another plug here for the rest of our Solar Week programming. We have another expanding Solarize webinar series tomorrow focused on workforce development with our PEA partners in workforce development. And then Friday, there is a PICO collaborative, a half-day event talking with PICO on interconnection and permitting updates in Upper Darby. That's still open for registration. I think today's the last day, and that's really for our installer partners. So I just wanted to flag those upcoming events. Please do get in contact with either me, Abby Rambo, Solar for All Director, or Alon, or through the QR code to just get updates on more info on Solar for All as it rolls out. But with that, thank you all so much for joining us. And this will be posted online shortly. Thank you for your questions. I hope everyone enjoys this beautiful day.
Thanks, everyone.